In the last provincial budget, the Ontario government announced its intention to move to a performance-based funding model for colleges and universities. And here to help us understand just what that means and the impact it could have on the education students receive at our post-secondary institutions, we welcome Gyllian Phillips. She is Associate Professor of English at Nipissing University and past President of OCUFA, that's the Ontario Confederation of University Faculty Associations. And Alex Usher is here. He's President of Higher Education Strategy Associates, and we are pleased to welcome two familiar faces who understand this complicated topic, but it's an important topic, which is why we're doing it. I want to take a second off the top as well to say that we actually had the highly unusual set of circumstances where the Minister of Training Colleges and Universities was prepared to come on this program with the two of you and have a discussion about it. Ross Romano from Sault Ste. Marie. But sadly, some kind of family, I think, what was the expression? A family personal emergency came up at the last moment, and we hope he's okay and everything's okay. But sadly, he is not able to be with us right here. Okay, let's dive in. Alex, performance-based funding. What does that mean?
Well, usually what happens, the way that the government gives money to institutions is it gives the money based on the number of students they have. And that's mediated by the kinds of students that they have. You get more for an engineering student than for an arts student, that kind of thing. Performance-based funding is a way of saying, actually, we're not as concerned with the number of students that you have. What we care about is the results that the institution is able to obtain. So, for instance, you pay for graduates, you don't pay for students. That would be probably the simplest way of describing it. Performance-based funding has been used all over the world. It's in use in, I think, about 43 US states. It's in use in most of Europe, places like Norway and Germany and France. This is pretty standard way of doing business, at least for part of the budget. Usually it's about student completion. Sometimes it's about research outputs. And in one or two places, it's also about student employment rates post-graduation.
If other places have been doing this for a long time, how come we never have?
We have in very small amounts. So Ontario has had, I think, about 1.5% of university budgets have been based on completion rates for almost 20 years now, I think. So it's not totally unknown, but it's never been a major portion of the funding here.
1.4% for universities, 1.2% for colleges.
There you go.
Very small.
Yeah, and I think so. One of the raps against it is that sometimes if you don't design a performance-based funding system well, it can make funding very uneven for institutions. So you do well one year, you don't do well another year. And certainly in the late 1990s, there were a couple of states in the U.S. I think South Carolina was one of them, where things did go very badly and money did fluctuate a lot. And that's not so much, I would argue, an argument against performance-based funding, but it's an argument against really bad performance-based funding indicators and ways of turning those numbers into dollars.
Gyllian, if the province plans to take this new and different approach, what would be the view of professors across the province to this?
Yeah, well, faculty across Ontario are opposed to this. It's a reckless measure, which is going to introduce inequities between universities within the system itself, but also inequities for students who may want to attend university. And there's no clear evidence produced by this government that this kind of move, this dramatic move, is necessary, or there's no evidence, indeed, that it will improve the quality of education. So, although my colleague here says, you know, do it well, there's not a lot of research to demonstrate a truly good system of performance-based funding. And what we see here is a reckless set of arbitrary targets, which actually don't measure the quality of education at Ontario universities at all.
Do you share those concerns?
I think there's two types of research on performance-based funding, and one of them are the very quantitative methods, and you try to see, well, you know, they put in a performance-based funding system in X year, did it change the graduation rates? Those are difficult things to do. There's a whole bunch of ways that the dependent variable gets constructed that it's actually very difficult to figure out, because usually for there to be a change, you'd expect there to be a big change in funding. And usually if they're designed well, you don't have big changes of funding in year one or year zero. So those kinds of discontinuity studies tend not to pick things up. The more qualitative studies, and Tennessee has done is a state that went to 100% performance-based funding. There's been some really good work on Tennessee, and that's a place where you can certainly see the work that institutions have put into improving student outcomes, right? Can we get more graduates? Do we make sure that there are more minority graduates who are coming through the system? And I think what you see is that it does change institutional behavior. You can question then whether or not changing institutional behavior actually changes institutional outcomes, but then that's a question of institutional effectiveness, right? So I think there actually is a fair bit of evidence to suggest that it does change institutional behavior, which is what you want to do.
Well, let's put up a chart here. And Sheldon, I'm going to ask you to put this up, and then I'll describe it for those listening on podcast. They have decided, apparently, the province of Ontario, that there are going to be 10 basic metrics that they will judge post-secondary institutions by in order to determine how this is all going to work out. And here they come. Graduate employment earnings, experiential learning, skills and competencies, graduate employment rates, institutional strength and or focus, graduation rates, Alex, you mentioned that earlier, research funding and capacity for universities and an apprenticeship-related target for colleges, funding from private sector sources, which would go to research for universities, community and local impact, and an institution-specific target related to economic impact. So these are the metrics by which, in the future, post-secondary institutions are going to be judged to decide how much funding they're going to get. What's wrong with any of that?
Where do I start?
At the beginning.
All right. I think one of the points that I made earlier is that none of these metrics actually judge or evaluate the quality of education from any of our institutions. And in fact, a lot of them are...
Well, can I just jump in there?
Yeah.
If you graduate with skills and competencies, have you not had a quality education?
Well, no, that's an interesting one, and I know you have things to say about this as well. That's actually the least defined one of the least defined of the categories, and I know Alex has referred to it as one of the more intriguing aspects of it. So that's a tricky one. We have no idea what they intend to measure with that, or how they intend to measure it. But I think, regardless, I would argue that our skills and competencies of our graduates are clearly evaluated and determined at the university and institutional level. Students are evaluated in every single program very thoroughly as they come through, and every single program is evaluated for the kinds of skills and competencies that students are intended to achieve at the end of those. And so I feel like there is already a lot of oversight and a lot of checks and balances throughout the system. So we know our university graduates are really well educated. They're well prepared for life and for the workforce. And I think one of the things about this, having these kinds of metrics out there, is they create a perception that there's a problem. There isn't a problem. This is a solution in search of a problem.
Okay, let me try this though. Alex, from what I understand right now, there are, for colleges, 38 different metrics which they are judged against, and for universities, 28. 38 and 28, they're cutting it down to 10. In some respects, is this an effort to sort of laser-like focus on what the province of Ontario wants its universities to be good at and what it wants students to be able to do once they graduate?
That's one spin on it, and I think if that is the spin that someone tries to put on this, I think what worries me about the current set of proposals is that among the things that got tossed from those extra indicators are all the indicators around access.
Such as what?
Indeed.
Well, the number of Indigenous students that you're bringing in, number of students with disabilities. Those were things that institutions needed to report on. They didn't, they were pretty soft targets. I mean, they had targets, but it didn't really matter if you hit them or not.
But it didn't make the cut of the top 10
Didn't
here.
make the cut of the top 10.
Definitely.
And I actually think that does matter, because if you look at the graduation rate, which I think in many ways is should be the simplest indicator on there and the easiest to get some agreement around. It seems to me that if you put a graduation rate indicator in there and you don't put an indicator for access, you actually do create some incentives for institutions to start creaming off students and just say, we're not going to go after those kinds of students because we can get higher, we can get better indicator results if we don't take those more difficult students. And I do think that's a problem.
Can I jump in on that
Please.
graduation rates? Because that's a good one to as an example. So I agree with that. I think there's some real issues around access and equity. And from another direction too, if you're tying funding to graduation rates, and again, we don't know exactly how they're going to determine that or define them, but graduation rate usually means time to completion of degree. Now, I'm at a northern institution, a small institution. It serves often first-generation students, students from lower income brackets, a lot of students on OSAP. So when you look at the cuts to OSAP grants, coupled with the fact that my students are going to be, I have students who work 30 and 40 hours a week at a paid job and go to school for full time. That's like a 80-hour work week.
They go for a paid job to help pay their tuition to attend
That's correct,
Nipissing.
so that their debt load is not huge. The likelihood that those students are going to complete a bachelor and honors bachelor degree in 4 years is lower, right?
They'll take more time.
They
'cause
will
they
take
need
longer.
more
They
time.
will drop out for a couple of years and they'll come back. There's clear evidence to show that students on loans rather than grants do not have the same level of persistence.
So this new system would punish
exactly.
that kind of student in your institution.
Exactly, and that's where I was going. So if we fail to meet our targets in graduation rates, what happens? The money comes out of our budget. It goes to another university that's much better at meeting those rates. And why is that? Because maybe their students are more privileged. So I think there's some serious consequences. And I also want to think about what that money out of the budget does. It punishes the students. That money comes out of the classroom, right? Our class sizes get bigger, number of full-time professors goes down, or professors at all in front of the classroom goes down, and those students have less help, less support to meet their growth.
Alex, can I just get your take on whether or not you see that rolling out that way? Because if Gyllian is right, and if the standards are failed to be met, and if therefore, is that the plan, that money would be taken away from these institutions and given to other universities or colleges?
I wish that was how it was going to work. I think it's going to be much worse than that.
What do you mean?
So, I mean, in most performance-based funding systems, what happens is they say, here's an envelope, right? And as this government has said, they want it to be 60%, right? Which would be about $3 billion between all the universities and colleges. And you would compete for it, right? You would say if your rates are, a certain level, then you would get a certain number of points, and your share of the points is your share of the $3 billion. And there are ways to deal with some of the things that Gyllian just talked about. So, for instance, in France, they have a completion measure, but if you have less, it's rated on a curve. So if we have two institutions and we have the same graduation rate, but students at her institution are less privileged, she gets more money, right? So you can make those kinds of things work. The real issue, I think, in Ontario is that they're not using an envelope system. It's not saying there's $3 billion here, the institutions can have it. What they're doing is what I call a contract system. And what that means is they're saying to each institution, we're cutting your budget by 60% and you can win that money back. Okay?
So they're very much competing against each other right now, or they will be.
So the line is that they're competing against themselves, because the level that you have to reach as an institution will be based on your own numbers. So, the target for graduation rate, if Nipissing's got a lower level than U of T, then Nipissing is going to be required to hit a lower number to get 100% of its money back. But here's the trick, okay? The trick is, if you don't hit the target, what happens to the money?
Good question. What's the answer?
It goes back to Treasury. So it does not go to another institution, it goes back to Treasury. So I think then what you're into is a very weird situation where you have to create 10 different targets for all 40-odd institutions, so 400 targets, and you have to hit 100% on that target or you lose money. You can't overproduce in one target and underproduce in another. So what that means is if everybody hits their target, everybody keeps their budget. So if you have a really low target, this is what I call pointless performance-based funding, right? If you make the targets really low, then in fact nothing changes. Everybody does what they're doing now, nothing changes. But you could also have painful performance-based funding, and that is if the targets are set really high. And what that would mean is that people would miss the targets, the money would go back to Treasury, it would not go to another institution, and post-secondary as a whole would be poor. And that's why I have always worried that the way this was designed is in fact a stealth cut to post-secondary education. I hope it's not, But the problem is that if it's not, it's going to be pointless as a measure, right? It's either pointless or painful the way they've designed it.
Just to be clear, this is not about to happen overnight, which is why there's considerable discussion happening right now. And Sheldon, can I get you right now at the bottom of page 2, thank you, to bring that graphic up. And again, for those listening on podcast, I'm going to describe it. As we suggested earlier, the proportion of funding tied to performance at the moment is only 1.4% for universities and 1.2% for colleges. But that is going to amp up starting next year if the Government of Ontario, in fact, goes forward with this as they have described it. It would go to 25%, and then there will be a 10% bump every school year until the year 2023-24, and it'll be a 5% bump up to 60% eventually by 2024-25. We get this? So by the year 2025, 60% of the budget will be determined by these metrics that we just described, and the $3 billion that Alex estimates is up for grabs here. Do you think that's enough time to make all of this happen?
I think it's a very ambitious timeline, and in fact, we actually don't know how it's going to be implemented. I mean, even now, even when the process is supposed to be starting for next year, it's not clear how the targets are going to be set. It's not clear how that data is going to be measured. It's not clear the timelines by which all of those things are going to be achieved. So it's pretty ambitious.
Ambitious isn't bad.
Well, it is. It is if what we're talking about is stepping up a rate of potential cuts, as Alex is talking about, up to 60% in 4 years. So doing that without even really knowing how you're going to do it or how the institutions are doing, I think it's chaos in the system.
Well, you mentioned Tennessee earlier. How long did they take to get to where they are right now, and is it working better?
That's a good question. So they've had some form of performance-based funding for quite a while. They've moved to 100%, I believe, in 2010. One difference, right? Okay, so obviously there was an envelope system there, and so they designed it in such a way that the numbers moved very slowly. In first year, it wasn't millions of dollars could go missing in an institution. I think it was very carefully designed. And if anyone wants to go, just type in Tennessee performance-based funding into Google, and you can see all the documents, all the spreadsheets. It's actually quite fascinating, the amount of work that they put into it and how transparent they've been, which is not something we've seen here in Ontario. And they allowed it to move gradually. One of the secrets they had, though, was it was very difficult to lose in their system, because although they moved to, in theory, 100% performance-based funding, in fact, everybody was starting off exactly where they ended in the old system, and they allowed it to drift slowly. And they've been pumping money in continuously for 10 years. So the amount of money available to compete for, the pie is growing at the same time as the numbers going.
Should we be doing that here?
It's always easier to put in performance-based funding when the pie is growing. Putting it in when the pie is shrinking really does make it difficult.
Yeah.
Is part of what's going? I mean, let me take a step back here for a second. One of the great things, I guess, about the post-secondary system in Ontario is that as long as you're a qualified student, there's a place for you in there, right? As long as you get the marks, they've got a place for you somewhere at one of the, whatever it is now, 40 institutions, colleges or universities, whatever. The downside, we have been told, is that by putting everybody on such an equal playing field, it makes it more difficult to create institutions that are really world-class and superb and can compete with the Harvards and Stanfords and so on and so forth, because we're more worried about equity than excellence. It seems to me this is designed to try to get more excellence. Do you see that?
No, I don't. I think one of the ways of gaining excellence, and again, this is borne out by research in both teaching and research, is by adequately resourcing both activities. And what this aims to do is cut resources from those activities. And so I think...
Well, only for those who aren't meeting the top 10 list.
Yeah, but again, I think we need to back up and ask the question, what is the problem here? Is the problem that we don't have enough high elite private universities in our system?
Not private, but we may not have enough.
Well, that's the Harvards and the Stanfords,
okay,
right?
Well, we might not have enough elite universities. If you want to compete on a world stage to be the best university, one of the top 10 in the world, they would argue we got to do more of this.
Well, and I would argue per capita, we do have elite institutions, and that we've been really, over the years, we've had a kind of agreed philosophy that we're going to be responsible about balancing that need for high-end research. We've got the high-end tech at Waterloo, and we've got U of T, with the kind of universities that allow for equitable and regional access, like Nipissing and Windsor and those kind of institutions. So I would argue that the health of a province, the health of a nation, depends on a kind of balance between that kind of attainment and also a level of spreading it around so that you have a depth of learning in your citizenry.
I think everybody agrees that you got to find the sweet spot on, great access, great equity, and all of that, with also conditions that create excellence. Where does that sweet spot move if this new system comes in your view?
I don't think you can make a feasible argument that it's going to create more world-beating universities if it doesn't involve more money, right? Ontario's level of public funding of universities is not very good.
Goes down all the time.
It goes down all the time. It's pretty close to America. I mean, we did this a little while ago at my office. We just sort of said, so let's look at the public and private spending in Ontario. It actually looks exactly like the United States.
Yeah.
The rest of Canada looks a little bit more like Europe, but it's about 1/3 public funding and 2/3 private funding of various types, fees and.
And it was the exact opposite when you and I went to university.
Pretty much, yeah. So I don't think that will do it. I mean, I understand that there's a desire to raise standards, and it might do that in some ways, in some places. But look, U of T is one of the top 10 public universities in the world. And Ottawa and McMaster both regularly make the top 200, and to the extent that you care about world rankings, those two will always make the top 200. Waterloo has enormous strengths in innovation. There's lots of good universities out there, and it's a difficult province to serve because it's so big. We're about the size of the Netherlands in terms of population, but we're not, in the Netherlands you can get anywhere in an hour.
Right.
I have trouble getting to work in an hour in the GTA. So
That is true.
And so I think it's a much more difficult kind of province to serve. And so I think it's a tough balance to hit. I don't think we've done too badly. I think what we've done really well at, and what I always worry about in these kinds of situations, we've done a really good job of creating a set of polytechnic institutions that I think are really innovative, really world-beating. Places like Humber, places like Seneca.
Ontario Tech?
Well, that's more of a university still, but I mean,
Okay.
I'm thinking more that, sort of Algonquin and Humber and Seneca and Sheridan and Centennial and those kinds of places. They really are special. There's nothing like them else in North America. And they have this fantastic way of dealing both with access and quality, not Harvard kind of quality, but I think in a much more kind of applied way that helps local businesses, that helps industry adapt to global competition. That's the stuff we should be working on.
Then again, they don't have $30 billion endowments, do they?
No.
And they're still managing.
No.
Okay. The minister couldn't be with us, which we're sad about, but you've both given him lots of good advice, which we're happy about. So, Alex Usher and Gyllian Phillips, we thank you for coming into TVO tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.